Hello, I'm Mobiius, and this is Oscillator One. In this episode, I sat down with ALVABEAT, who's a stylistically diverse and heavy-hitting artist on the Aim to Head roster. We chatted about the classic electronic acts that inspired him to start his own artistic career, his upbringing in a musical household, how to overcome perfectionism and writer's block when you're creating, the importance of making music that you really love, and heaps more. He has a really inspiring and uplifting story to tell, and I hope that you get the same kind of good vibes from it that I did. Enjoy.
Oscillator One.
All right. Hey, man. How you going?
I'm doing good. Yourself?
I am doing just fine. So, most people on the internet know you as ALVABEAT.
Yep.
Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, ALVABEAT, yeah.
All right, perfect. So I guess right off the bat, first question I'm curious about, how did you come up with the name for your project?
First of all, I am like an extremely undecisive person. Like, I think I'd thought about the name for about, I'm not even kidding, like 4 years. And because I was always really insecure about my music, I had the 4 years to think about it anyways. But I just ended up asking my parents. My surname is Astel Alvarez, which is Spanish. And my dad came up with the name because he was like, just do it. Just use your brain. It doesn't matter what your name is. What matters is the music. And he came up with a Alva Beats or something like that. And in the end, I just took the S out. But it's not a very interesting story. It's just Alva from my surname and Beats because my dad thinks that's how EDM and new music works.
Just about the beats.
Yeah, about the beats. Yeah.
Nice. So your last name is Alvarez, but you're living in the UK, yeah?
Yeah. So I was born in Spain. Yeah.
Ah, word. Did you grow up there at all?
Yeah. Yes, I lived there for 18 years. Until I was 18. My dad's English. My mum's Spanish.
Okay.
Northwest Spain. So it's not your like super sunny kind of Spain. It's you do have sunny season, but you have a rainy season and staying at home making music season essentially.
Okay.
And then I moved to the UK when I was 18 to study music production out of all the things.
We'll go figure. Where'd you go to university for it? Was it like a music production specifically or just like audio engineering? What was the
it's a music production degree at UCLan, which is Lancashire, which is northwest England.
Okay.
It was a decent degree, but let's just say they don't really appreciate newer music, like something like that. You know what I mean?
I 100% understand. I also went to college for music and I was like, oh,
yeah,
are you fucking kidding me? Like,
yeah. Yeah, it's like where's the drum kit and the bass player? And I was like, I am that.
yeah.
And that just didn't compute.
Oh,
essentially.
yeah. Well, it is what it is, and now you have the little piece of paper, and hopefully it was cheaper than mine. American university is an arm and a leg, and the other leg along with it. Does the UK have a more European approach to the university?
Not anymore. No, over the past like 3-4 years, they've pumped the prices up like a crazy amount. Probably still not as much as America, but in the UK, it's probably about 30K to get a degree, whereas about 10 years ago, it was 9K or like 8K.
Damn.
Yeah, and then places like Scotland are completely free, which is just, like 5 hours away. It's so annoying.
Good God. So why'd you end up moving up to are you living in London or somewhere else in the UK?
Yeah, so right now I'm living in London.
Okay.
When I moved from Spain, I moved to Lancashire, which is not very well known to the rest of the world, but it is well known in the UK because it's a really like beautiful kind of place. My sister, I've got a sister, actually did exactly what I did, but 2 years prior to me. So she did music production as well. And because I was interested in music my whole life, I've been surrounded by it. you know, my parents are, they've never been musicians, but there's always been music on in the house, you know what I mean? And they've always like pushed me in that direction if I wanted to go that way. And yeah, I ended up there because my sister had done that degree 2 years prior to me, and she said it was good, you know, it was. And I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to play it safe, go for something which I know is at least good, you know, rather than going to something completely new, different country, all this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I ended up there.
You decided to play it safe by getting a degree in music.
Yeah. Makes no sense, does it?
So do you guys ever make music together, you and your sister, or is she in like a different wave entirely?
Yeah, so essentially, she's gone the whole live music engineering way, which is essentially how I started. When I started doing my music degree, I was always interested. It was always about electronic music for me, but when I was living in Spain, I did, you know, I've been learning music for years and years and years, you know, when I was in Spain, but no one ever knew how to teach me electronic music. Like I'm sure you've found that before.
Yeah.
Where up till YouTube appeared, there really wasn't that much, you know, except really random DVDs,
Yeah.
which use, you know, like massive, like like hardware, which is like £10,000.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, this is how you make a sense. It's like, yeah, but
Where am I going to get one of those?
yeah, exactly. So until YouTube appeared, that wasn't really a thing, was it?
No.
So yeah, I just ended up going over there and just started with the whole like live sound engineering, which I really enjoyed. But then after about, I used to work doing sound at pubs and stuff, you know, like open mic nights and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it, but then it got to a point where I was like, I want to be the guy on the stage. I don't want to be the guy doing the sound. You know what I mean?
I 100% understand what you mean. I did a very similar thing where I was working like kind of pursuing sound and like concert production and things like that, and then started to work as just a stagehand on these like big, you know, arena shows for like Kendrick Lamar and
Oh, really?
you
Nice.
know, what Earth, Wind and Fire and Ed Sheeran. And I was like, wow, this is cool. And then I was, you know, you become just a little assistant like gopher for the people who are actually doing the sound and everything. And I was, you know, in the free time I was like, what's it like, you know, do you like it, is it? And what I basically gathered was that, you know, you're on the road all the time. If you want to do it at the highest levels, make a good living and like do that, you're on the road all the time, super high pressure environment.
No.
Like there's hundreds if not thousands of people waiting to step up and take your job if you fuck up, you know,
Yeah.
something. And yeah, and then you're away from home for half the year.
No.
And your sleep schedule's like, tour is inherently unhealthy, so you're dealing with as much as an artist is, if not more. And I was kind of like, okay, I could put all the effort into achieving this and pursuing this, but I would rather be the artist. I'd rather be the person on stage doing it if I'm gonna, you know, go that hard at something,
If you're going to put all your life into it, you want it to be exactly what you want.
rather than making somebody else's, like helping realize somebody else's vision. It's more fulfilling to realize your own if you have it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So you mentioned growing up in Spain, there was always kind of music around and things like that.
Yeah.
What was like the earliest memory that you can think of where you were like really connected with music?
So as I said, we lived in northern Spain, middle of nowhere. My parents still have the house there, they still live there.
Okay.
And I did get to see my friends like a fair amount, but not as much as, say, if you live in a city, you can just pop down to see your friends.
Yeah.
I lived half an hour drive away from everyone. So essentially what our weekends would be my dad had this vinyl player, and he'd just put vinyls on all weekend, you know, and it was really nice, you know, when you're that age, you don't realize how nice it is. But then you grow up and you're actually, I'm really privileged to have had that, you know what I mean? So I think my first memory was probably, yeah, just listening to Deep Purple. My dad was really big into Deep Purple, you know, like metal rock, you know, like from quite a while back, Status Quo, all that kind of stuff.
Like very early metal.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I used to know all of their tracks. They were also my first gig. He took me to go and see them. Well, my parents did
Oh, that's cool.
when I was like 6 or something.
Really?
Yeah, because there wasn't like age restrictions in Spain, but I don't know if there is anymore, but back then there wasn't. And it was like, it blew my mind. And that's the moment I was like, I want to do music in some kind of way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'd say that's probably like my earliest memory where I thought like, wow, it's
Okay.
like, how do they do that?
Yeah. Did you start to pursue like playing an instrument or something after that? Do you play?
Yeah, I do. So in Spain it's quite I'd say it's quite backwards in some aspects into the whole music thing, but it's actually quite advanced in other aspects. So where I grew up, like the council has a music school, a council music school. So the advantage I have now is I can compare it to the UK, where I live, it's all private music tuition, which obviously is quite expensive because, you know, as it should be, people get paid well. But where I grew up in Spain, it was a council run, so it was actually, I'd probably say around €40 a month, and you'd get a lot of stuff out of it. So I started studying music theory when I was like 5, I think it was,
Okay.
and then I had to pick an instrument when I was 7. Like they do this thing where you start with theory, then you have like a bit of an open day where you try all these different instruments. You know, I tried out. I really wanted a drum kit just because how loud they were and how you could just do beats. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But my dad convinced me to go for Spanish guitar because he was like, you know, if you go for Spanish guitar in the future, you'll go for electric, and then you can be like Deep Purple.
Yeah.
And then I was like, sold. I am doing that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I started Spanish guitar. Can't remember exactly. I think I was like 6 or 7, and I've been playing it ever since. And I did jump onto electric, where I am competent. I've been playing it for like 15 years, but I am not as competent as other people I know. So I don't play it as much because, you know, the talent that's out there
Oh,
is ridiculous, as you can imagine. Yeah.
oh, of course, but I mean, no matter what you do, somebody's always going to be better.
Oh yeah, 100%.
But if you enjoy it, then I think have you ever tried to work guitar into any of your tracks as ALVABEAT, or have you not?
I have, but I've not really found the right balance. But weirdly, I've got a remix coming out next weekend, and I've always been really into like rock music, you know, like new metal, all this kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And a band from London approached me who I've heard about. I've followed them on Instagram, and they do like drum and bass metal kind of stuff, biomechanical. You probably heard of them.
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
Yeah. And they asked me to remix one of their tracks, and I started working with it, and there were so many guitars to work with, and I was so excited. I was like, finally, I can work exactly what I've wanted to work all these years.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like amazing vocals, like big guitars and stuff. So I think that's kind of opened, you know, my mind a bit to all of that because you know, growing up with Linkin Park and all that kind of stuff, that was like my sound. That's what I wanted to listen to all the time.
Yeah.
And now I was like, I can do that, but with my kind of touch to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's been really fun actually working on that. And as you said, it's kind of like opened my mind to actually picking my guitar up at some point.
Yeah. I mean, and plus now you have a resource. Like they seem like pretty nice guys, so I'm sure you could reach out to them and like, do you have any tips on how to marry guitar inside of a production without having it be a fucking nightmare to work with?
Yeah, 100%. I think one of the advantages that I've noticed is when you either work on remixes or you collaborate with people. Personally, I love collaborating with people, and I've been lucky enough to be able to ask people who I listen to their music. You know Lex Digital, who you'll know from Marathon,
Hmm.
Asal, who I met in person because randomly his best friend lives just around the corner from me.
Oh shit.
Yeah, so he comes over from France to see his best friend, and I just met him one day, and it's two people, for example, which I really look up to musically,
Hmm.
who I would say are slightly above me in level, like say production wise and listeners or whatever.
Yeah.
But I learned so much from working with them that it just makes you better. So that's also what's happened with this remix, where I got set all these stems and I was listening to it and I was like, how do they do that?
Yeah.
So then you're like over analyzing everything, like, how has he done that thing there? And I just learned so much from these guys. And as you said, they're so approachable as well.
Hmm.
So it's always good to have people like that.
That's cool, man. Really cool. Okay. So kind of leapfrogging off of that, you mentioned a little bit about like new metal and Linkin Park and of course Deep Purple and stuff in your childhood. With all of that, what inspired you to start the ALVABEAT project? Because you mentioned a lot of like rock bands. So what electronically was the thing that pushed you to want to do this?
So as I said, I think it's been my parents all the way through. Essentially, I've been lucky enough that my dad grew up in England. You know, when Queen was big, all these amazing bands, and thankfully at some point he picked up the Chemical Brothers in the 90s. And so I also grew up with Chemical Brothers blasting, and like on like vinyl, like proper loud. Probably not very good for my hearing, you know what I mean? But yeah, I went to see them. I was really big into them already, but he took me to see them in northern Spain when I was 7 or 8. So I went from going to see Deep Purple to going to see the Chemical Brothers, and it was like that. Also, just absolutely. So I've already loved Deep Purple.
Mm-hmm.
Then when I saw the Chemical Brothers, I had like another awakening. Well, I was like, well, it sounds like the spaceships on like stage. What is going on?
Yeah.
And yeah, ever since I've seen them about 15 times. I
Damn.
absolutely love, yeah, I absolutely love Chemical Brothers.
Okay.
So stuff like Chemical Brothers, Underworld, The Prodigy. I've seen them quite a few times. I absolutely love The Prodigy. And I never really saw myself able to make that music because, as I said, what I always had available to me in Spain was Spanish guitar, electric guitar. I went to music production classes when I was a teenager, with Pro Tools and stuff. And everything I ever learned there was high level, like rock music. But whenever I asked the question, like, yeah, but how do you get a synthesizer? No one ever knew, just because that wasn't really anything that anyone ever really did over there.
Yeah.
So when I moved to England, I was like, this is my time to learn how to do that. Obviously, when I moved, it was 2012. It was the height of EDM. You know what I mean? I was proper into like Skrillex, all that kind of stuff. But the most easy thing to learn about was like kind of pop Avicii kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I learned how to make that. Um, I made it for quite a while with one of my friends, and we did okay with it. We made like cheesy Avicii music, which got released to like Trap Nation, all these places.
Fuck yeah, dude. Trap Nation is huge.
Yeah, well, it was back in the day. I don't really know if they're still there, to be fair. But,
I mean, I think it's still around. I could be wrong, but still, man, congratulations. That's awesome.
yeah, yeah. So when it happened, it was great. But every time I made that music, in the back of my mind, I was like, I'm so close to doing what I want, but it's still not what I want. You know, I'm making music which makes me like happy, and it's fine, but it all felt very commercial. And in the background, I just started spending the money I made from work and buying synthesizers just to look at them because I didn't really know how to use them. So like I bought like a Korg MS-20 and I was like, oh my God, that looks amazing. But what do I do with it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yeah, slowly but surely, whilst I was doing that project on my time off, I was doing like my own kind of stuff. And then it got to a point where I met an artist who's a friend of a friend, Matthew Gallagher, who's an amazing singer from where I used to live up in Preston. And we just said, you know what, we'll just make a track together, see what happens. And I literally, before we made that track, it was summer, I was in Spain. I spent about 3 months in the summer just learning sound design because I was like, I cannot go into that music studio with someone as talented as that guy and be like, what does this do? You know what I mean?
Yeah, you got to know your shit. Got to be ready.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I learned sound design, made a track with them, spent way too long on the track. I'm not even kidding, probably about 3 or 4 years, because I was always kind of had this imposter syndrome where I was like, I'm winging it. I don't really know if I'm doing this the right way. I look at the Chemical Brothers and they've got their shit together. You know what I mean? They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I'm here and it's all like, what am I doing? Like, I know the composition side of it and all that, but and yeah, then one day I just randomly just decided to release it and it just ran extremely well. And at that moment I was like, I need to keep on doing this because this is what I want to do.
Okay.
And yeah, and that's where we're at the moment.
So what song was that?
So that song's called Don't Know with Matt Gallagher.
Mm-hmm.
It's the first track I released on Aim to Head, which weirdly is only the second track I've ever released as ALVABEAT.
Mm-hmm.
I'd made a track prior to that, and I went down the rabbit hole of YouTube videos of this is how you market this, this is how you do this. I spent ages and ages and ages on it. And I think I got about 5 plays in 5 months on Spotify, and it was absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's 5 plays more than before. You know what I mean?
That's true.
But it was soul crushing at the same time. I was like, I've put so much time and effort into this track. I spent. I kind of see myself as a perfectionist in my own mind, even though my music is far from perfect. I try and get it to the point where I think that's as far as I can take it.
Yeah.
And I spent so long on that track only to release it and just have 5 people listen to it. And I was like, no, this is just never going to work for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And yeah, it's a chance on the Instagram. I posted that track. I met someone called Light for Storm.
Yeah.
And I was chatting to him, and he was like, I've released on this label. Your music sounds really good. I'll speak to them and see what we can do. And I was like, actually, I've got this track, which I've been working on for 4 years. And I don't know why. I've just never had, I've never been brave enough to release it. Because what if it doesn't sound as good as I think and someone points at me and says, your music's horrible? And I got past that point and it was Aim to Head. He put him in contact with them. And ever since, it's been 2 years. I've just released with them for 2 years.
Fuck yeah, dude.
Yeah, so if it wasn't for Light for Storm and Aim to Head, you know what I mean? I wouldn't be here.
Nice. Well, we're glad to have you here. Aim to Head is, yeah, they're fantastic. I kind of stumbled upon them, but such nice guys and like really care about what they do.
Yeah.
Man, 4 years on a track. Do you find yourself still doing that? Because I 100% empathize with the perfectionistic, like, desire. You want it to be as good as possible, but I tend to find that, that last 20, 15, 10%, like the amount of effort that it gets, like it's kind of the diminishing returns. Like you can spend a lot more time and it's getting a little bit better. So have you noticed yourself, like, are you still doing the same thing, or have you reached a point where you're kind of like, you know what, this is good, this will do, I don't need to spend another 3 months on this?
Yeah, so I think something that happened which was positive was the fact that that track had such a positive outcome to it. Because as I said, I went from 5 plays to 450,000 plays on that track. So for me, that was mind blowing. You know what I mean? So that moment, I thought to myself, I know I've been making this track for 4 years, but I know, as you said, diminishing returns, that last 10, 20%, I literally spent the 3 years out of those 4 doing that 10, 20%.
Yeah.
Like the track was done. We spent the time, we pretty much almost finished the track in the studio on the day. But I just listened to it and I was like, yeah, that kit, oh, that's not perfect. Oh, I've learned how to do this. I should add that new thing that I've just learned.
Mm-hmm.
So it just all like, it's a big like snowball. And essentially I was just like nitpicking it for like 3 years.
Yep.
But ever since I released that, I think part of the issue with the 4 years was that I was never secure about this music at all. You know, as I said, I'd been exposed to extremely professional levels of this music, you know, in the Prodigy, Chemical Brothers, Fatboy Slim, you know, all that kind of stuff. So I was always comparing myself to them.
To like industry veterans.
Yeah, exactly, which is extremely unrealistic. But at that point in time, you think to yourself, what I need to release has to be as good as that. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I've learned over time, I've spoken, I can't remember, I think I saw it on Instagram or I spoke to someone or something, and they said you should not be comparing yourself to, you know, the leading industry professionals. They have, you know, 20, 30 years experience. They have massive teams behind them. You should be comparing yourself to people on your same level, slightly above.
Mm-hmm.
And ever since I've done that, I take like a month to make a track or something like that.
Yeah.
So it is definitely much easier now than it was then, obviously.
Yeah. Once you get a little bit of the not gratification, the word is escaping me. Like once you put it out and you're like, oh, people do like this, people enjoy what I do, then it's kind of like, okay, if I can do it once, I can do it again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it feeds into itself. So like the sound of ALVABEAT is pretty synthy and dark, and I can kind of hear like some of the influences that you've mentioned in it. Was there any modern artist that drove you into this specific sound, or is this something that you just sort of happened upon naturally as what your ear enjoyed?
I wouldn't specifically, other than the ones I've kind of mentioned, I wouldn't particularly say there's many other artists. There's lots which, since I've started releasing this kind of stuff, I've learned about, you know, like Cloud, like Death Pact.
Yeah.
I'd even mention like people in our label, which I actually look at, like, for example, your music. It's not because I'm doing like a podcast with you or whatever, but I listen to it and, you know, it's different. And that's what I like about my music. And when I listen to your stuff, I listen to it and I analyze it, and I'm like, God, how has he done this? You know, it sounds
I
amazing
have no idea. Just making it up.
in the same place, essentially.
Yeah.
You know, like you, like Matteo, Tura,
Yeah.
Sierra. Like I didn't even know like who she was, and I just remember listening to the track once and being like, "Whoa, that sounds like bad, like as in good bad." You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
It makes me want to go to like a club, and I'm not that kind of person. And yeah, I'd say right now there's quite a lot of like modern artists, but they're all kind of smaller kind of level,
Mm-hmm.
which is I kind of prefer, you know what I mean? But other than that, there's not really, it all kind of was a case of I'm making music I want to listen to rather than like,
Then trying to emulate a style.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think that's brilliant. That's the best way to do it, honestly. I mean, it's creating the most honest thing for yourself.
Yeah, 100%. Because when I know if no one's enjoying my track, I know at least that I'm enjoying it. It's like I will listen to my track and be like, shit, that sounds good, man.
Yeah.
And you know, if more people like it, that's good. But at least I'm at that point where I'm like, you know, you might listen to my track and you'll be like, why has he put like a breakbeat sample there? And I'm like, yeah, because that's what I want to listen to there. And in my mind, that sounds good, and yours it probably don't. But
Mm-hmm.
you know, as long as I listen to it and I'm like, yeah, that's good.
Well, I mean, I think there's no other way to do it. I was talking to Swarm for one of these, and he echoed a similar sentiment. He's like, you really just have to make sure that you're doing what you love to do, because if it's not something that you actually really enjoy, if you're not really happy with what you're making, you're not going to be able to do it consistently enough to make anything of it.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
So all of that to say, with what you have going on now, how would you describe ALVABEAT to someone who's not familiar with your stuff?
I'd describe it as synth heavy, dark, breakbeat slash mid tempo, maybe. As I said, I've never really kind of listened to that much. As I said, I'm inspired by kind of old school kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't really be sure what, there's so many genres now, so that I don't really know where it would fall within them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually quite difficult, like when you go on Spotify and you have to do all your like, pitch your track and all that. What genre is it? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just music, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the way I'd describe it is if you like, you know, big, dark, heavy drops, that's what I tend to try and do.
Hmm.
Vocal heavy, usually my tracks are quite vocal heavy. I love lyrics, I love having a vocalist. Weirdly, one of the things I learned most from is I'm assuming you've heard of What's So Not.
Yeah.
He used to have Flume in it and stuff. I used to be really big into them and back in the day.
Yeah.
And I used to watch all, they have a few tutorials online.
They do.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things I learned was they were sat at a laptop and each one of them made a different section without the other person knowing what they were making. They just knew the key and they just went, yeah, join them. That's literally what they did. So it's almost two completely different tracks. I think they were working on Jaguar,
Yeah.
which if you listen to it, it's like super like ethereal at the start, and then it drops, and you're like,
What the fuck is this?
Where's this even come from?
Yeah.
And yeah, I was watching it, and I was like, that's such a cool approach to do this.
Hmm.
So kind of, I'd say that's what I really like about tracks, to be fair. And you'll find it in quite a few of my tracks where there's not really much lead up into something crazy. It's just like, nice vocals. Yeah, it's kind of electronic, a bit dark, and then it's like, okay, where did that come from? And I know your music has some of that as well. So
I didn't know about that from the classic What's So Not. I'm gonna have to go dig up those videos, I think.
yeah, you learn a lot from stuff like that, even like completely different genres. It's just it's so compatible, everything you learn.
Absolutely. I mean, and it also helps that they're both extremely talented, like had a lot of vision between the two of them for something new.
Just some guy called Flume, whoever that is, you know what I mean?
Inconsequential. So, so that's sound wise. Do you think that in your music you have any kind of like emotion or message that you're trying to convey to your listeners through what you do?
Um, I'd say so. I'm a very positive person in general, but weirdly in my music, lots of times it's not negative what I write about, but it is that kind of feeling. It is usually quite dark.
Mm-hmm.
And that's mostly because even though I'm a positive person, as everyone, we've all got good days, bad days. In my bad days, I think, my way to kind of get through them is I just write ideas down. I'm not great at lyrics,
Mm-hmm.
but I will write like a basic idea for lyrics.
Yeah.
And I don't have many bad days, which is very positive for me. I know I'm quite lucky in that.
Yeah.
Or then in my good days, I'll be reading the lyrics and I'll be like, God, you pansy, what you doing? but they work. They just work perfectly for the music. You know what I mean? It's a very dark vibe,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, that's kind of. I'd say lots of times, lots of my lyrics. I'd say I'd make two kinds of songs. I make the ones with like little like sample snippets, kind of stuff like that, like my track "Cruising," which has some like American rap on it. It's not really anything. I like cars. It talks about cruising. It sounds like a drifting song. There's not really much more to it.
Yeah.
But my like longer kind of tracks, like Free, Don't Know, one I'm making now with a Goth, they all kind of come from that kind of idea of you do have your darker days, and when you have your darker days, you just have weird lyrics in your head, like really dark lyrics. So that's kind of what they convey. It's not a specific message, it's just dark, I want to make you feel bad kind of stuff.
Well, I mean, do you want to make you feel bad? I find a lot of it is that, well, stop me if you disagree, but I think part of it can be like if you are going through something difficult or you're having one of the bad days and you listen to something like that, art that somebody else made, and you kind of feel like, all right, like it's not just me. Like I'm not crazy. This is a shared human experience.
Yeah, 100%. There's obviously an aspect to that where you might think you're kind of on your own when you feel that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, as you said, if you listen to like the lyrics, like, and like don't know or whatever, it's like you'll actually identify with some of the lyrics, which is what happened to me, say, with like Linkin Park or whatever. So it's quite good.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Linkin Park, probably one of the most, as far as lyrics goes,
Yeah,
maybe one of the most cringy bands ever,
I know.
but I love it so much. It hits. It just hits.
The right spot.
So we talked a lot about stuff that got you excited as a child, and a little bit about your peers in the scene. Um, is there any other kinds of music that's really getting you like excited right now?
I've always kind of tiptoed in metal, basically. So obviously I know we mentioned Linkin Park and stuff, but they're not really metal anyways. But I kind of, once I started making my own like electronic kind of stuff, I lost track of a lot of other music because
Mm-hmm.
I was just making my stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I always keep on trying to find like metal bands or like heavy kind of bands. My sister's really massively into like Slipknot, all this kind of heavy kind of stuff. Bring Me the Horizon,
Mm-hmm.
and weirdly, I've just been listening to them so much lately. But then weirdly, after I've listened to like Bring Me the Horizon, I'll be listening to Taylor Swift. So I'm one of those people who's kind of like, I don't really care what the music is as long as the music is good. You know, and if it makes me feel good, that's really all I really care about. So yeah, I've listened to all sorts, like any kind of top 40 kind of stuff, which most people hate. I think that's amazing songwriting.
I don't think most people, I mean, it wouldn't be top 40 if that many people hated it.
Well, yeah, of course, but you always hear like the producers be like, "Oh, guys, generic, all this stuff."
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, but there's such a big team of writers behind that it's a really good track. It's just the formula they're following in it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I literally listen to all sorts, and I'm always open to suggestions. So
Hell yeah. Yeah. I mean, honestly, what you said about pop music, like, yes, it's formulaic, but to make that song that connects with that many people in the way that like those top songs do, that's it's fascinating. Something to be like studied.
I wish I could do that, honestly. Yeah.
One other creative question. As a perfectionist, I'm sure you understand this, but like we all face moments of like self-doubt and criticism, and this can spiral into creative block, writer's block, and things like that. And if you've dealt with this before, like what have you found effective to climb out of those holes?
So I used to get a lot of creative block. Um, I'd say, obviously, as I said, when I first bought my synths, I had no idea what I was doing.
Mm.
Once I started to learn them, I started to just mess about with them, and it turned into like happy surprises. Since then, I've learned a lot of what they do. I've got like a sub 37. I've got quite a few now. I've got like 4 or 5 different synths. And if I don't really know, if I do have a bit of a creative block, I'll just get a kick drum, just be going dun, 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 for like hours on end, which I'm sure the neighbors don't like. And I'll just mess around with the sound and just wait for that 1 or 2 second loop when I'm messing about with it, where I think, oh wow, that sounded good.
Yeah.
And that's usually how I get around it. It's happy surprises most of the time.
Yeah. And doing it. You're not taking a break. You're not like, I don't know what to do. I guess I'll
Oh
go do something else.
no,
It's
no.
like you sit down and you're like, I'm gonna fuck around until something comes out.
Yeah, I'm just like, so I have my day job, and I finish my day job, I'll come home. It depends how the job's been in the day. I'll either play some games to relax and make music, or go straight into music. And if I've finished a track and I don't really know what to do at this point, I just think to myself, I need to start a track.
Mm.
And if that means playing a kick drum for 2 hours and just trying to find that little snippet of something I can work a whole track around,
Yeah.
then that's what I'm doing.
Nice.
And I kind of find that is quite useful. And another one which I found quite weird is obviously it's not an Ableton specific thing, but something I do all the time is usually when you like loop a section of a track, you loop it like perfect on the bar.
Mm.
But I've started doing this thing for the past, well, started for the past year. I've been looping them off the bar, and I've found so many things which say you're making everything to the beat, and you think to yourself, okay, that sounds good to the beat, but then you move it a bit to the left, like the loop. So it's like the end of one loop and the start of another. I
Yeah.
found so many like new ideas just from doing that.
Interesting.
I'm like, oh my God, that actually fits in even better. Like if it was completely reversed. So I do that a lot all the time. I get so many ideas from that.
Fascinating. So like you're taking like you have different ideas that you've done and you're like this one, this one, this one, and then you're moving
Yeah.
through them and seeing how to combine them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's essentially like you have like a say a 4 bar loop,
Yeah.
and you know it sounds good, but it could sound better.
Hmm.
And you're not 100% sure what it is. Is that the drums? Is that this? Just something isn't clicking. So I'll go from looping it for 4 bars, loop at 1 bar, and just move it around just at uneven times. And you'll just find that, and sometimes you'll just find that a sound which before wasn't really the main sound, like something like going upwards or something like that. You listen to it and you're like, God, that could actually be the sound there. But I'm focusing on everything else at the moment.
Okay.
So that's what I did with my track Lonely Day, where I always like having two different drops because you could just have the same drop twice, but it just feels very copy paste to me.
Mm.
I always like having a bit of a different vibe to the track where it like transforms, mostly because of that video. It kind of opened my eyes. But yeah, that one was just I was looping it, and I think in that one I unintentionally moved one of the whilst I was looping it, I tried to move the loop, but I somehow managed to move one of the bass lines like one beat.
Mm.
So it was playing on the offbeat, and it just made this insanely amazing sound. And I was like, wait, what's just happened? What's that? And yeah, and then I just realized that, and I was like, God, that sounds amazing. And I just kept it all down the second drop. So
Happy accidents.
yeah, exactly. No talent, all luck.
That's cool. So you have like a bunch of synths. I'm jealous. That sounds cool to have that. If you had, I was going to ask you what's your like desert island plugin, but I'll just broaden it to desert island synth. If you had to just pick one thing, everything stock, one other thing that you can bring to make music with, what do you think you'd go for?
I'd say it'd be in between my sub 37 and my Moog. I've got a Mother 32. They both have very different functions. So with yeah, so in my sub 37, I've always managed to get like the main leads and like in my tracks, but in my Moog, it's always been like ethereal kind of plucks and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say I'd probably go with a sub 37. It's just got, you can say presets to all that kind of stuff. I mean, I need some power on the island, but
Yeah.
you know, and it's also like 10 kilos, so it wouldn't be the easiest thing to move
The
around.
proverbial island.
Yeah.
Yeah. The sub 37 is also Moog, right?
Yeah.
I've looked into the sub 37 several times. Like I've been like, I really want this, but I've been moving around for years now, so there hasn't really been a point. But one day,
Yeah.
and then the mother, there's no presets, right? It's like semi-modular. It has a little patch bay for you to arrange things.
Yeah, it's got a patch bay, and then if you want a preset, you need to take a photo of it, essentially, which is it's what my Google Drive is full of. Because, as I said, I do know sound design and stuff, but I'm no sound design god. Like I know it to a certain level, but I know if I went down the rabbit hole, I could spend years just learning how to do everything. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't really want to do that. But lots of times I do know how to do 90% of the basic and more advanced stuff in it.
Yeah.
But then I can't remember how to do it again. So I just need to get a photo of it.
Yeah.
So that is definitely the old school way of doing it.
So do you make most of your stuff just with the outboard synths? How much do you rely on in the box plugins?
I'd say 50-50,
Okay.
probably. Like, I'd say a lot of my leads are outboard. Most of my pads are plugins. Um, and then it kind of depends on what kind of track I'm trying to do. If it's something more like cyberpunky kind of stuff, I just go with like Serum or stuff because I've got all of my presets that I've made in the past on there. Just use them, they're quick and easy.
Yeah.
If I'm trying to make something more, more developed, like I do when I do like vocal tracks, that's when I'll start using all my outboard gear because I've got more control and I'd say it's got a better sound to it.
Yeah, no, I noticed that. I was listening through your discography and I was like, these sound nice. And then that explains it
Yeah.
because it's the classic approach. So have you gone back to visit Spain to like I mean, obviously the music scene in London is legendary.
Yeah.
Have you gone back to Spain? Have you spent more time in like the southern cities and explored the music scene there, or can you speak to that at all?
I wouldn't say I've explored much of the music. When I was growing up over there, I watched an interview you did with a Bloody Boy who's from Tenerife.
Hmm.
And it's very similar all across Spain, unless you go to say like Barcelona.
Yeah.
Barcelona's big on this kind of sound. But when I was growing up, there's literally, I was the weirdo listening to Chemical Brothers, at school, whereas everyone else was listening to like reggaeton. They were listening to like Spanish pop music, which is there's some good stuff. I'm not going to say it's bad or anything, but it's just not really something I enjoy.
Yeah.
So when I go back, you can see that the scene is evolving. There's techno nights in my town now, back in Spain, which was never a thing like back in the day. Like techno was the one the druggies listened to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But now it's kind of like the cool thing to listen to. But yeah, it seems to be evolving. I've not been like southern cities, and I can't really vouch for like Barcelona or any of these places.
Hmm.
But from what I've seen, they have like all of these nights in those places which look amazing. That could probably rival some of London's ones. And to be fair, like no one really parties like a Spaniard in it. So so I know which one I'd rather be in. I'd probably rather be in Barcelona than in London if I'm going to a gig.
Do you get out to many live shows, or you said you're not into clubbing for the sake of it, but
Um,
do you go see artists that you enjoy still?
yeah, I try and see artists I enjoy, and I'm trying to push myself to going into just networking a bit more.
Hmm.
Because as you said, London's got a big scene. I've lived in London for 2 years. I used to live up north before,
Hmm.
and there's just such a scene for our music, which is weird because there's not really much music like ours out there, but you can just tell there's like a gap. Like there's not really many London bands or many UK bands that make anything similar to what you make. There's nothing like what I make or any other people on our label.
Yeah.
So I think music is probably about 25% talent, 25% luck, and like 50% networking
Yes.
because you need to know the right people.
Hmm.
And that's what I need to do. I need to push myself, go out there, try and be sociable. I'm quite a sociable person, but it's not essentially my scene, I'd say. But I'll grow into it, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's a challenge, man. Do you think that there is a legitimate window for the kind of things that we're doing as somebody who lives in London? Do you think this appeals to people?
I'd say so because I keep on getting messages from London DJs saying stuff like, which is quite weird because I know my music gets listened to in places, but I never expected it to be in a club, a mile down the road.
Yeah.
And I get messages of his people asking me to like if they can play my new tracks and stuff. And you look at these places and it's sold out shows, like kind of like dark kind of nights and stuff like that, and they're all sold out. And I just think to myself, obviously it's great that there's DJs who are obviously like pushing your music up, but how good would it be if they actually have the artist as well?
Hmm.
So I think there's definitely a gap for it. It just needs to be, you need to be brave enough to jump into the gap.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
I hope so. I'm planning to move up to Europe next year.
Oh, really?
So for the express purpose of wanting to get out, network,
Yeah.
start playing, start gigging around, just because it seems that, I mean, I love Asia dearly, but I don't sense any kind of gap for it. Not super into it.
I'd definitely say London's got quite a lot going on.
Have you DJ'd before? Do you know how?
I used to, I used to have like the little Hercules when I was like, well, like 14 or something. I was
Let's
actually really
go.
competent. Yeah, exactly. One of my friends, I used to play in a band, like guitars and stuff. And after we did our rehearsals in my mate's house, he had this massive system. And I managed to get him into all this like electronic music. So he'd let me plug my laptop in, and we both learned just kind of how to DJ on that tiny like Hercules thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we were actually quite competent, to be fair. It's like it wasn't just like playing tracks. We were like trying to do all kinds of like mixing in between tracks, all this kind of weird stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started making music, and I kind of left it to the side. But I did buy a Pioneer DJ deck last year, which is still sitting there looking at me like, use me.
Yeah.
So, I just need to find like the right gap in between making music and actually learning something else. Because obviously, I know you can make money. Essentially, what we all want is to make a living from our music. I don't need a Ferrari,
Mm-hmm.
although it would be nice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't need it. I just want to be able to make a living from it. And whilst a streaming can kind of get you some money, it's just nowhere near enough what you need to make a living from it.
No, not unless you're getting millions of streams.
Yeah, exactly. And live seems to be the way to go. And it's something I've always been very comfortable with, having played in like bands and stuff like that. And I just think to myself, why haven't I not done it sooner? You know what I mean?
Now's the time, man. Get after it.
Exactly.
You got the tools. You have the music.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, especially if people are asking you like locally about your stuff, be like, yeah, you can play it. By the way, can I come play?
Yeah, exactly. Can I take your job? Thank you.
Adjacent partners, not competing. Yeah. I find sometimes when I am DJing, I realize it gets me re-inspired about my music in a different way. Because when you just are sitting in a room making tracks, you're like, oh, this is cool. But then when you like are on the dance floor, you're like, this works. Or like, I wasn't a huge fan of producing this, but this really works on a on a dance floor, and can kind of like bring a new layer of creativity or inspiration, or a different angle than just sitting inside all the time.
Yeah, no, it's something that I think everyone really needs to look into, to be fair.
Yeah.
There's a Spanish artist who I've been speaking to for quite a while. Mala Sangre, or I'm not sure how they say it in England, like Mala Sangre or something. I don't know.
No, I know what you're talking about. I know him.
Yeah. But really talented guy. We've been talking about making a track together for absolute ages, like the Spanish connection kind of thing.
Yeah.
But he's taken the step from just producing to doing live stuff, and he's doing really well. And he's super talented guy. If you have, if whoever's watching this hasn't checked him out, it's like I listen to him and I think he's another person I listen to, and I think to myself, that's different. It doesn't really fit into something. That's just him. And that's what I love about it. And he's managed to translate that into live gigs as well.
Yeah.
And he's doing really well with it. And it seems like that might lead to something for him in the future. So I think that's we can't really lose the live music and just stick to streaming, because it's a completely different, firstly, it's different experience. And secondly, it's like the remuneration you get from it, is completely different.
I mean, having that feeling of a room full of people, like you like feeding the art out and then getting the response back.
Yeah.
Like there's something about that. I mean, music is essentially, communicating emotion and stuff to people. So
100%.
doing it face to face in a social setting in many ways essential to the whole point of it.
Yeah, I agree.
Anyway, we can just about wrap this up here, but what can people look forward to you in 2024? This might be coming out around the end of the year, I reckon. About
December. So at the moment, I'm working on a few. I think I'm working on the 3 tracks. 2 of them with Goth, who is a singer from. She lives in Brighton, so it's quite kind of close to me. So dark tracks, really dark tracks actually, where we were kind of like, will this even like get accepted? You know. But yeah, I love the sound. She loves the sound, and that's what it's about. End of the day. As I said, I'm also looking at, the whole DJing kind of aspect of it, and just much more tracks essentially. Hoping to expand my horizons, and just kind of try and get a bit more of a sound to me, because right now I make what I like, but that also means I make very different genres.
yeah.
And if you listen to one track, you might not know I've made a different one. Like they sound like almost like completely different artists. But I need to kind of like just put a body of work which is all samey.
Yeah.
So that is what will be happening in 2024.
Nice. Developing a cohesive sound for the project.
Exactly.
Nice, man. I'm excited to hear it.
Yeah. I'm excited to hear your stuff as well.
Oh yeah, we don't need to figure that out, don't I? Anyway, thank you so much for taking the time to chat today.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, pleasure as well. Cheers, mate.